Welcome to the Heal Podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan Gores, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. On today's episode of the Heal Podcast, I speak to Light Watkins, the man who taught me transcendental meditation in 2007, or 14 years ago. Meditation changed my life, people. I would definitely be a different human, much more stressed, physically and mentally in much worse condition had I not developed this practice and relied on this beautiful tool that I use every day. If you think about it, we are inundated with information. We have our smartphones and the notifications pinging us every moment. We've got a 24-hour news cycle. We've got Twitter, which just blows up our phone anytime something in the world happens. We are inundated with information, and most of that information is negative, disempowering, and instills fear in us. So, since we haven't evolved quickly enough to be able to process all of this information, I highly recommend meditation as a tool. Turn within, close your eyes, cut off all of that outside, external noise and negative stimulation. Turn within, deepen your breath, reconnect to yourself, and quiet your mind so that that small, still, powerful inner voice of truth, your soul's guidance, your inner GPS, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, God, for that voice, the true voice, to come through and guide you. That is meditation for me. It's practical, it's spiritual, and it's beautiful. And I'm so grateful to Light for teaching me transcendental meditation so many years ago. We have a lot of fun in this conversation. We talk about turning our FOMO into JOMO, the joy of missing out, something I need to work harder on. And we talk about his new life of minimalism. And he's traveling around with nothing more than the possessions he can fit in a backpack. He's amazing, and let's dive into a little meditation and inspiration. All right, so I'm here with Light Watkins, who is my meditation teacher. He taught me transcendental meditation. He is a speaker on happiness, inspiration, and meditation, obviously. He's the author of 2 bestsellers, The Inner Gym and Bliss More, and he has a new book just came out called Knowing Where to Look. He's the host of the popular wellness podcast At the End of the Tunnel, where he interviews philanthropists and creatives that dedicate their lives to uplifting humanity. Welcome to the show, Light.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's good to see you again.
So good to see you. Yeah. 2007.
2007.
You were my yoga teacher at Equinox, and then you said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm teaching a meditation course.
Yep, I just graduated from my meditation teacher training in India, and so I had to leave my teaching for about 3 months, and then I came back and I started teaching in West Hollywood, and then I think you learned in Santa Monica. I was like renting some space out of some therapist's office.
Exactly, we had to walk up the stairs.
And so here we are today.
Yeah, but it was so cool, and we'll start with this because meditation back then was not mainstream as it is today. Now there's apps for that.
Everything, videos. There wasn't even YouTube back then.
Yeah, it's crazy. Or smartphones. I don't think that.
Yeah, no real. We had Blackberries and iPods.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I remember, there was a little bit of like, this is so strange because you had just gotten back to India, and part of it was a 4-day course if I remember correctly, and you have to offer 1 week of your earnings to the guru.
And you were working as a guest fit model.
I was.
At the time.
So my income had recently increased tremendously, and I was
Yeah.
like, 1 week of my earnings, what the heck? Like, that's a lot of money. Is this guy like a con man? No, I didn't really think that, but I thought that was really cool because it's just a relative scale for whatever anybody can offer, and it helps you to commit when you invest in the learning. So talk a little bit about what you've learned, because I learned so much about the meaning and the benefits of meditation, not only physically, but spiritually and emotionally. And that, I think, plus the investment and the 4 days of repetitive training, where we got deeper and deeper, that really allowed it to stick.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that really attracted me to the training. When I met my teacher, he said, come tomorrow with some fruits and flowers if you're interested, and by the way, bring a week's worth of your salary, whatever that is. And I was a brand new yoga teacher at the time, 2003, and so I wasn't really making a lot of money at all, and I could have easily justified paying a couple $100. But I thought to myself, this is a wonderful opportunity to really claim what I want to do, what I want to earn, what I want to give. And so I went to my bank account and I looked at, how you can get a balance statement before you pull any money out in the ATM machine. So I got my balance sheet and it said something like $900. And I thought, okay, And I ended up going with $400, which was half my net worth at the time.
That's huge.
Right. So again, it was a lot of money. I was in my late 20s and changing careers. I had been modeling for several years in New York, and that just, the reason I stopped was because it was declining. So I was at a crossroads, and that was really the sort of gateway to this new lifestyle of really listening to your heart, following your heart. And my heart told me, pull out half of it and give it to the guru. And I actually wrote about this in the book, but I talked about how, I could have easily justified not doing that, and then 20 years later we could be talking about a story of how I saved $400 20 years ago and how savvy I am, financially. But instead, I've had an opportunity to work with people such as yourself and thousands of other people and positively impact lives all over the world and write books on meditation and inspiration. All of that because I took that leap of faith on that fateful day. And so it was easily the best $400 I've ever spent. I'm sure you could say the same thing about whatever it was that you spent, 900 or whatever, 1,000, I don't remember. But and that exchange is really important. I think that's one of the main reasons why people don't stick with it long enough, is because they don't have an opportunity to really engage in an exchange like that, where you have to really go inside of yourself and commit to something, right? It's not just learning, but it's also committing to investing yourself into the learning. And I think that really does make a difference.
It does, and even just the commitment of showing up after I paid the $1,000-ish.
There was no question you were going to show up.
Yeah,
right?
I was like, I don't want to get up and go to this office in Santa Monica and find parking and walk up the stairs at 7 a.m. for 4 days in a row. Like, I had a very robust social life at the time. That required a lot. But I paid the money, so I was going to do it. And then it's not just the morning, but it's the afternoon. And you get that. It's almost like you just imprint this practice from the get-go. It's brilliant, I think.
So it's been 14 years for you now?
14 years. And
you've been relatively daily?
Relatively daily. I wouldn't say that. I've mixed it up. I have that foundation of transcendental meditation and the mantra, which I think is great. I learned a primordial meditation from Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
I do get lazy and listen to a guided meditation. I do Joe Dispenza's meditation. So I mix it up now, but I think...
But you're doing something pretty much every day.
I'm doing something every day. And just like you talk about in your book, and this is your experience, I crave it. Yeah. I can actually... I'm just a much better human when I meditate, because it creates space so I'm not at full capacity of stress every day and just react. It just creates space so I can be more present and respond.
Right.
And I'm still human, so if I get knocked off the track by something, which inevitably comes up every day in our lives, I can come back into awareness and out of reactivity a lot quicker and recover quicker. So I think, to me, I'm just like, meditation is my savior. So thank you for that.
Beautiful.
And along those same lines, because a lot of people say, well, I can't meditate, I can't quiet my mind. And one of the things that stuck with me when you taught meditation was, it's not about quieting the mind, because thoughts are inevitably going to come up. Can you speak a little bit about releasing the expectations or the stress around this?
Yeah, that's one of the
idea.
Other key benefits of learning with a teacher that actually understands the nature of the mind as it relates to meditation, is that there's a lot of misconceptions, even with people who guide meditations, that you can let go of thoughts and observe and do all these things, but really it doesn't make a huge indent in your experience unless you understand how to navigate the mind in a way that allows it to become settled. Because really it's not even the mind that's becoming settled, it's your witness of the mind that's becoming more and more settled. The mind just does what it does, kind of like the ocean is going to be the ocean, right? But you can experience different depths of the ocean that can give you a different quality of awareness. And so when I talk about the mind and meditating with the thoughts and all of that, I kind of equate it to a big party with a bunch of your friends. All your friends represent your thoughts, and to treat your mind just like you're at that party. And just like if you were at a real party, say if it was your birthday and all of your friends came out, you would obviously embrace them. You would feel great about having them all there, all at the same time, right? You wouldn't want to be at your birthday party by yourself. No, you want it to be a huge occasion. Everyone comes in. And so if you can treat your thoughts during your meditation in the same way that you would engage with your real friends at your birthday party, then you might see that your mind can become more settled as a result. So it's the opposite of trying to control and put a velvet rope in the middle of your own birthday party and saying, you stay over there, and only certain thoughts are allowed inside, and that's creates a lot of commotion, as you can imagine.
And in TM, or Transcendental Meditation, you're given a mantra.
Yes.
Am I correct that the mantra is actually, it's a Sanskrit word, but does it actually mean anything?
No, it doesn't. That's one of the reasons why those mantras work in the way that they work, is because they don't mean anything. So that's another sort of layer to the practice, but a meaningless sound is inherently more attractive to the mind than a sound with meaning, which is why music has such an effect on us. When you hear Mozart or Beethoven or drum beats or whatever, it can invoke a shift in your state just from hearing the music. But what does the music mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just vibrations, it's frequencies. And so somebody worked out thousands of years ago in India that if you experience these particular vibrations in this particular sequence at these particular times in this particular way while you're meditating, that you can also shift your mood from your own thought of that vibration, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. So I'm sure we'll get back to meditation, but you have this new book called Knowing Where to Look, which is a compilation of your daily inspiration emails that I've signed up from day one. I find them so inspirational, actually. I'm like a total quote junkie nerd. And I just think, I'm the total person that has the book pile in their bathroom, and I just pick up for inspiration while I'm in there. So this, sorry to say, it's going to end up in my bathroom. But I encourage, it's so inspiring, and I love that you say it's supposed to be like a magic 8-ball where you just, like the things from the 80s or the 90s that you shake up and you ask them a yes or no question and it tells you the answer. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so it's a book that is, the subtitle is 108 Daily Doses of Inspiration. And they are taken from this email that I've been sending out every morning since June of 2016. So we're coming up on 5 years of daily inspirational emails. And many of those emails get a really big response, lots of engagement. People reply, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I needed to hear," and the whole gamut. And so over the years, I've sort of been keeping track of which ones have been the greatest hits. And then my agent said, "Hey, why don't you just did this meditation book, you've done you've done a happiness book. Why not do an inspiration book?" And so I revisited a lot of those emails, and I was like, this is really amazing, but how can we make it different or better for people who've already been receiving them? And so I got with an art director, an illustrator, and we created a visual experience that one can engage with a lot of like little Easter eggs and fun things in there, where we kind of posterized the daily doses. And so the idea is, this is not a book that you would read necessarily from cover to cover. It wasn't arranged like that. It wasn't written like that. It's the experience we've all had back when we used to go to bookstores before the pandemic, where you go in, you see a book that had a nice cover, you pick it up, and then what do? You flip to some random page, just to see what they're talking about. And if it's a cool story or an anecdote, maybe you read more, maybe you buy the book, right? So this is a book full of cool stories and anecdotes. So any page you flip it open to, hopefully will give you some dose of inspiration, which is not the answer to whatever you're going through, but it's just a little poke, a little nudge, just saying, maybe look in a different direction, right? So just as an example, if you're going through some sort of relationship woes, or if you're having trouble with committing to something, you may read a story about commitment and just get a different perspective on what it means to commit, right? And because I tell a story in here about how a commitment is not even really a proper commitment until the original plan goes out the window. And I tell the story about how I committed to running up a hill one day, 1 year, 10 laps every other morning or something like that, and how 90% of the time I didn't feel like doing it, but I learned about commitments over that year. And so just sharing like little tips and little wisdom like that, so other people can feel like they have a little more support.
And it's so cool because so much of what we see today on Instagram or by influencers we only see this like glossified perfection, and you share these wisdoms, and you also share your personal experience, which is filled with fallacies and mistakes, and it's so generous of you to share your true stumbles that got you to this place you are today, and the stumbling never stops, right? We're evolving. But so, like, for instance, you called discipline, like, for this whole commitment conversation, you have to be really disciplined. And you have shared like the committing to running up this super steep hill 10 times and how much resistance came up every day, but you still did it. Or the commitment to write a daily inspirational email for 1 year. But so talk to me a little bit about the discipline illusion.
Yeah, so the discipline illusion is one that I sent out, and it was the response to a woman who was telling me that she's impressed by how much discipline I have. And I stopped her right away and I said, you're wrong. I don't have any I don't have any more discipline than you have, right? What I do have, though, is I have been very honest with myself about my shortcomings. So, and then I gave a few examples, such as meditation, eating healthy, and what else did I say? Meditation, eating healthy, and
drinking.
finishing my book.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, giving up drinking. Yeah, so giving up drinking took me many, many months of experimentation with just really cutting out, one type of drink every month, and then another type of drink, and promising myself that if I wanted to go back to drinking, I would. But so it didn't happen overnight. And finishing the book, my first book was self-published, and it just was dragging on for 3 and 4 years. And I finally broke down and said, okay, I need to do something different here. And I wrote out a contract to myself and to a really good friend of mine, my buddy Drew. And in the contract it said, you will finish your book by such and such date. And it was like 3 months from that day. And I post dated it for that day. And then I signed it, and I wrote out a personal check for $4,000, which was a lot of money for me at the time. And I wrote it to Drew, and then I gave him the contract, and he signed it. And he was signing an obligation to cash that check if I did not have that book published by that date. And so, of course, there was no way I was not going to do it.
Yeah.
All the excuses went out the window, right? I all of a sudden had all this time to work on it. And so I ended up finishing it. And so, that wasn't a discipline issue. That was just an excuse issue and a prioritization issue. With eating healthy, I was saying, if I go to the grocery store and I'm hungry, I know I'm going to fill my shopping cart up with a bunch of stuff I don't want to be eating. But in the short term, it'll, satisfy a craving. So I always try to eat a meal before I go shopping. So just little things like that,
But they're game changers.
Yeah. So it's really less about discipline and more about just being honest with yourself about where you're falling short and putting stop gaps in place.
We all need them. And one of the things that jumped out as part of this conversation was, talking about we're all busy. Mm-hmm. And if you look at a successful person, life didn't slow down for them to be able to accomplish what they accomplished.
Right.
They just became more busy. They prioritized their passion as well as on top of the minutia of everyday life that they had to do.
Yes.
Whether it's a 9-to-5 job and you wake up 2 hours early to meditate and write or whatever it is.
Right. That's doing it while you're busy. That's that piece in there about that. Yeah. Which is really important also to communicate is, it's easy to look at someone who's accomplishing a lot of things and just imagine that life slowed down for them, but for you it's really fast. But the only difference really is that person's just doing those extra things while they're super busy and have a full schedule and all of that. So you're sacrificing something, and that introduces the whole conversation of the work-life balance, right? Because when you're passionate about something, there's not a lot of balance happening in your life, as from your documentary and even from writing books. I have another piece in here called FOMO, where I talked about having to write New Year's Eve and holidays and birthdays, and like every time you turn around, you're having to dedicate your time to whatever your passion project is. And the FOMO you feel is really an opportunity to consciously choose to invest your time into this thing that you are getting fulfillment from, instead of fantasizing about the fulfillment that you're ultimately looking for coming from a party or from whatever you're having to miss out on. So imagining that the fulfillment of what your passion project is going to ripple out into the world because you invested the time into doing it now. So it's really important. And a lot of these principles are really just, hey, look, what you are ultimately looking for is right where you are right now. You just have to use it differently or look at it differently.
Yes. Change your perspective. Change that FOMO into JOMO.
JOMO, the joy of missing out.
There's so many nuggets in here. I just encourage everybody to pick it up because it's things you've heard before, but like you said, it's that exact thing that you need on the day that you flip to that page. For instance, I've come a long way, but I'm still a people pleaser. I still care. I had to send an email to someone yesterday, and I was so worried about the response because I feel like I was disappointing them and I didn't want them to not like me. And it's like such an old story. But I love you talk about specifically towards this issue that I have about the donkey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tell the donkey story real quick. It's a good little ditty, or I can tell it.
The donkey story is a man. This is a classic story, so I didn't create this one.
Yeah.
I just told it in my own words. And the book has a portion of those kinds of classical stories that have been told for forever in yoga classes and meditation circles and stuff. And it's a story about the man and the boy riding the donkey in through the town, and some people start, gossiping about them and saying how they shouldn't put all that unnecessary weight on that poor old little donkey. And so the man gets off and the boy rides, and then people start saying, oh, what a shame that boy's going to make that old man walk like that. And then so the boy walks and the man rides, and then they pass some more people who say, oh my God, can you believe, he makes that little boy walk while this grown man is actually on a donkey. And so then they both get off and they pass some people, and the people say, can you believe how stupid they are? Like, they have a donkey to ride and they don't even use it.
So there's always going to be
There's always going to be somebody saying something, and so ultimately you just have to do what feels right to you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's called What Feels Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then you go on to say, I'm not going to talk about all your ditties in the book, but you say something, you will never be criticized by people who are doing more than you, only by those doing less. And Brene Brown talks about that. Like, don't criticize me unless you're in the ring getting beat up just like me,
Yeah.
So I love that. So let's pivot to your new commitment, which you are in Los Angeles sitting in my studio right now, but you've been living in Mexico City.
Yes.
You are nomading it right now.
Yes.
Tell us what you're doing and how you were inspired to give up all your earthly possessions. And
Well, it's interesting because the book actually opens with that story of in 2018, when I was 45, I decided to sell off all of my possessions. No storage room, nothing. So get rid of journals that I've been carrying around for years, and scrapbooks and yearbooks and all my photos. Got rid of all of that and anything that didn't fit into a backpack, and to start living remote, just kind of mobile existence, I guess you want to call it.
yeah.
At the time, I was leading trainings in between London, New York, Los Angeles, and these are places that I just personally wanted to go. So it's not like people were sending for me and paying for my expenses, and I was paying for everything. And but I was able to sort of make it work, and teach people in all of those places, and do retreats. So because I've been teaching meditation for 15 years at this point, so I had established a name for myself, but yeah, I was living with a capsule wardrobe, and I am living with a capsule wardrobe, and what I talked about in the opening chapter of the book was how I was allowing myself to be guided by inspiration, but I made a distinction in saying that 2018 was not my first time doing that. I'd actually done that a couple of times before, and the very first time I did it, I was living in Chicago at the time. I was just out of college, and I had my first real, quote-unquote, real job. And it only lasted about 3 months, not because I got fired, but because I realized that it just wasn't where I saw myself for that point in time. Like, it was great. I was working in advertising in the creative department, but when I looked around the office at the people who had kind of risen up to the top, I didn't really feel like that's the track I wanted to go on. Like they didn't have that sense of fulfillment that I didn't even have language for it. I just knew it wasn't a match. And something inside of me said, you should quit this and just go out and explore the world. So I did, and I had an inspiration to go to Paris, of all places. It was just, I don't know why, I just thought Paris was this, I don't know, romantic, interesting place. I didn't know anybody there, by the way. I didn't speak the language, and I didn't have a lot of money either, because my first 3 months was basically a trial period, and so I ended up quitting that job with maybe like less than $1,000, in my account. And so I sold all my stuff that I had, and most of that was like college stuff, and had a little duffel bag of clothes and got a one-way ticket to Paris. And long story short, ended up in Paris on the first day and ended up meeting some old friends of mine from college who connected me with this whole group of people. And the way it worked out was just very coincidental. It was it was like almost unbelievable.
Yeah,
like
lots
you put
of
it in
synchronicities.
if you put it in a script, people would think, oh, this is
It
you've
felt
lost
very
me.
Hollywood movie, yeah. Because it just everything just unfolded
It just
really
all
beautifully
unfolded
for you.
beautifully, yeah. And it was like so many signs that, okay, you did what you were supposed to do. So once I had that experience, and then I repeated that experience a few more times over the years, and it's almost as miraculous, something happened. And I was like, wow, okay, so I'm onto something here, make fewer plans and trust your heart more and just see what happens, right? And so by 2018, I was just like, okay, I know I'm going to do it. It's just a matter of, I got to put my 30-day notice in. I got to get rid of my lease, my car lease. And it's like more like logistical. I wasn't afraid of doing it. It was just more about organizing, because I had accumulated a lot of stuff at that point in my life.
23 years later.
Yeah. So it's the bottom line though is to always leave a little wiggle room for some inspiration in whatever you're doing, because you just never know when it's going to hit you, and when it does hit you, your life is going to always be better off if you follow it. And here's the distinction, because a lot of times people say, well, I don't know if what I'm hearing is the voice of inspiration, or if it's my ego, or if it's my, there's so many voices inside, right? For all of us.
Yeah.
There's the negativity voices, there's the like hater voice, the inner hater, fear, trauma, pain,
intuition,
social conditioning, all that stuff. And then you have your intuition and your heart guidance and all of that. And so
how do we translate?
the way you're hearing the voice of inspiration, which I put in, it's like an umbrella category of your heart, your inner guidance and all that. It's pushing you in a direction that is going to at some point require a leap of faith, which means you will not know how it's going to turn out. So it's like that Joseph Campbell quote, if you know what your path is, then that's not your path.
Because someone else already.
You've adopted somebody else's path as your path. But that's not your path. Your path, you don't know what's around the corner. You have no idea. All you know is that you have this strong urge to go around the corner and check it out, see what's happening over there. And you can come across, people who are not going to like what you're doing very much. Likely that will be the case, right? And that's not a sign that it's not meant to be. That is a sign that you are square right in the middle of your path. That's it. So get comfortable, because
perhaps the ones that aren't liking what you're doing is you're triggering their own.
Well, that's your obstacle, as Ryan Holiday calls it. That's your obstacle that you get to move through. That's your cocoon that you get to move through to become the butterfly of your life, of your path, of your purpose, right? And then once you do that, other people are going to look at you and they're going to adopt your path as their path, right? And that gets them out of the status quo until they realize the same thing you had to realize, which is no one can tell you what your path is. Your path is really can be known from within on a moment-to-moment basis. So it's really important to have a sense of present moment awareness, which is where meditation ties in through all of these doses, right? Some more obvious than others, but it's the through line is that you have to be present with what's happening inside, and because that's your clearest guidance is what you feel inside.
So good. Yes, meditation helps to quiet a lot of that noise so that your intuition, your inner GPS, your higher self can speak a little louder and clearly. I love that you talked about the butterfly and the cocoon, one of my favorite metaphors, that pressure, that darkness, that pier that you have to go through, or it's alchemy, right? It's the crucible. It takes heat to turn lead into gold. And so it's great for someone to, look up to that person that the Tony Robbins or the Light Watkins or whoever, Oprah, whatever, whoever inspires you because they've paved their own path through the fear.
Sure.
But then you have to eventually go into that fear that cave that you fear entering,
Yeah, and Oprah said something. I've actually wrote a dose about this once. It was really profound. She said, look, if I had known how being myself was going to be the ultimate key to my success, I would have been myself a long time ago. And that's what she's referring to, Like the thing that we hide because we are ashamed of whatever's going on with us, that's your key. No one else has a copy of that key. That's your key to your path and your purpose.
Oh my gosh.
And much of the developmental phase of life is really just getting comfortable with knowing that this is going to be something I'm going to use to give my special gift to the world.
Yes.
Right? It's my life, my lived experience through depression, through anxiety, through healing myself, through all these things, which is what your documentary is essentially about, is people who've kind of converted their worst time into their greatest triumph.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people, once they're through that heat and they have healed, but went through a lot of fear and change and transformation to get there, they all say it's their greatest gift, their wake-up call.
100%.
They never change. They wouldn't change anything.
I saw a TED Talk once. I can't remember the woman's name, but she had her legs amputated when she was a kid, and she now travels around the world, and she gives all these motivational talks and inspires millions of people. And she said in her talk, a reporter asked her at the end if she could choose to have her legs, but none of the impact that she's had, or stay in her current situation and have all that impact, what would she choose? And she had to really think about it. And she said, I would choose to be in my current situation. I would choose to not have my legs again, which is incredible.
Because it's something about that purpose that makes us come alive.
It does.
And it
supersedes anything about our individuality.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. And this is there's so many different ways you say this in the book, but this is why we need this inspiration.
Yeah, that's the whole one. This one message told 108 different ways.
Yeah, exactly. To be yourself.
To be yourself.
Because you have gifts, and you're the only person that came into this life at this time to share the gifts in the way that you can share them. Miles Davis says in your book, anybody can play.
Yeah.
The note is only 20%. The attitude of the motherfucker who plays it is 80%.
Your attitude, yeah.
So that's even if someone has even if someone made a documentary about healing, like myself, and you watch it and you're inspired to make another documentary about healing in your way, do it.
Do it.
That's your purpose.
100%.
And it's going to be different than mine, and it could affect different people or more people or whatever,
And look, if you don't have the courage to take the leap of faith, that's fine. I get it. Maybe it takes you a little longer, but don't stand in somebody else's way. If they have something that they feel called to do, don't start telling them how, it's hard and it's challenging. We get it. Everything in life is hard, right?
Yeah.
Let them have their own experience. Let them fall down. Let them make mistakes, because that's how everybody learns. No one has done anything of note without having the experience be riddled with mistakes. And from every single one of those mistakes, you learn how to do it better and better the next time. So, and I think there's a dose in there about just not being that kind of friend where your knee-jerk reaction when your other friend announces what they want to do in life that doesn't fit into the conventional model of success. Don't say, oh, you've gone too far, or, these kind of common rebuttals where you're trying to, and you may mean well because you don't want them to be hurt or have, expectations that aren't going to be met. But that's usually how it starts, is you announce something and then everybody tells you you've gone too far, or you're not thinking this through all the way, and all of those are the embers of inspiration that you're snuffing out right there. So don't do that to other people. And as a result, you'll start to feel more empowered when you have those embers of inspiration, and that's your gateway to your path.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to talk about. There's one along those same lines. You have a page, a dose dedicated to the teachers. So you teach people how to treat you,
Mm-hmm.
and you go through the list, and it's so good because there's things like teachable moments. I think this is such a good thing to remind people of along those same lines
Sure.
of like projecting your fear onto someone else.
Mm-hmm.
We are always teaching others how to treat us. If we are easily reactive, we teach others to sugarcoat their truth,
Mm-hmm.
which is so funny. Like in my relationship, I want my partner to tell me everything,
Mm-hmm.
but then if I
You
get
don't like
upset,
it.
if I don't like what he's telling me and I react, he's going to be less likely to
He's
share
gonna edit.
everything. So he's going to edit. So it's like to be mindful. This is life-changing. If we are impartial, we teach people that it's safe to be open and honest with us. So
Mhm.
again, like you're saying, like, oh, just be open to whatever your friend or your loved one is
Mhm.
wanting to explore. If we routinely gossip about our friends or our enemies, we teach others to question our loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
If we refuse to spread rumors, we teach people to trust that we will stand up for them too.
Mm-hmm.
If we are reluctant to take responsibility, we teach others to be wary of us playing the victim. If we own our experience, we teach people to trust that we can shoulder responsibility. If we consistently overgive, we teach others to take us for granted. Oh my gosh. But if we give thoughtfully and in accordance to need, we teach people to appreciate our efforts.
Mm-hmm.
If we are perpetually late, we teach others not to depend on us. If we are punctual, we teach people to respect our time. Every interaction is a teachable moment. What lessons will you teach today? It's so true.
Those are some hard truths.
Hard truths, but it's so
But it's
true.
so true. Yeah.
So start to, again, do unto others.
Yeah. And again, like I write that from a place of experience, right? It's like I'm not like perfect. I still overgive in certain ways, but you start to see, you connect the dots and you start to see, oh, okay, that's this drama that I'm experiencing in my life is really not that person's. They're just reacting to what I'm teaching them.
Yes.
To how to treat me, right? And so now I could be more mindful about that. And I really do feel like life in general is just it's a classroom, where you're just learning these lessons and you're refining. It's a process of refinement more so than I graduated from that lesson. No, you didn't graduate. It's just now it's operating on an even higher level, right? So it's something that we all need, and I need to read that often as much as anyone else.
Exactly. I love the analogy of classroom and going through life, and we're so hard on ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We feel like, we have these unreal expectations of ourselves. Like if I'm a wellness quote unquote air quote influencer,
Mm-hmm.
but then I go and like drink too much on my birthday and I'm hungover the next day, like I feel like a fraud, Or if I am a vegan and I like sneak a piece of goat cheese or whatever it is, you just have these unreal expectations of and pressures that we put on ourselves. And if you look at the life as a classroom, it's like sometimes you're going to go up levels and get deeper, more degrees the more
Mm-hmm.
you go, and you can't beat yourself up for not knowing. You're in
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten, you're not in grad school
Mm-hmm.
in certain areas of your life,
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and that's, we both kind of wrote the same thing this New Year's Eve.
You wrote that too?
I posted the similar thing. I'm like, everybody is so excited that, especially this past year, like, 2020 sucked because of politics or COVID or whatever, and they were so excited for 2021. I'm like, but COVID, politics, it's all going to still be there on January 1st,
Right.
So it's all about just this growth, evolution process, and
owning your own experience. Even if it's external, like owning that, like, okay, what am I doing to contribute to that, or what am I doing to help heal that? Because there's always something that we can do.
Yes. So 2018, you've been this mobile lifestyle, and right now you're living in Mexico City.
Living in Mexico City out of a backpack.
Like, what is your knowing telling you now? Like, what is your next step? What are you...
What's interesting is it's become a lifestyle, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm always experimenting. I'm like a scientist with my own self. Like, let me see what it's like. Like, I've been drinking coffee for 3 years. Literally started drinking coffee when I was like 41 or something like that. I just started drinking coffee, right? I never drank coffee my entire life.
Wow.
And then I'm like, why am I drinking all this coffee? Like, what does it even do for me, right? So then I just cycled off of it recently in the last couple months and just having that experiment. And, always kind of playing with my diet, always playing with like, what happens if I drink less green tea, more green tea? What happens if I exercise in my shower? Like, what is that experience like? And
that's the next book.
Yeah. Well, actually, that is going to be a part of the next book. The next book is going to be a minimalism, like spiritual principles of minimalism. But yeah, so I'm always trying out things. So I'm definitely not the person that waits until New Year's Eve to start a new thing. Like, I'm always trying out things. And so I'm kind of, just in the moment with the whole thing. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen beyond. My current apartment situation in Mexico City is until the end of this month, till May, and then I don't know what's going to happen after that. I may stay there longer. I may change it up. It really depends, too, on what's happening in the world, And I think that's one of the great things that came out of the pandemic is that we all kind of were forced to live with more uncertainty, which is how the world is anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's easier to mask if we're in more of our routine, but it's actually quite uncertain. And we also got to see that nobody's in charge. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to think that they know what they're talking about, but then there's another side that'll expose that they really don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you really have to own your own experience. You have to take responsibility for your own health, for your own wellness, and do whatever you have to do in order to feel like you can, progress and move forward and ultimately be of service to other people.
Oh my God, this is so good. The nature of life is uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So to learn, you're learning to become okay with not knowing what's next. Such a powerful way. The pandemic exposed that there is nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knew, nobody knows, and nobody knows. Like, it did bring us back to, okay, I have to turn off the news and tap into my own inner knowing, whether it's about getting the vaccine, not getting the vaccine, whether it's about
masks, no masks.
Like
researching, not researching.
And I don't think it's, there's a lot of people that they're still looking externally for those answers. But for me, it's like I have to tune back into myself and my knowing, because it's clear that nobody knows what's best for me except for that soul guidance, that inner GPS.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember this one dose I sent out. It was about those Tibetan monks who form they create those mandalas, mm-hmm. those geometrical shapes with the little sand. And they spend days and days and days on these elaborate designs. And then right at the end, when they put the last little grain of sand there and it's so beautiful, they wipe it all away. Because it's really the process of creation. It's not about attaining some external beauty. The beauty is inside during the creative process. And that's really what we have to adopt more of in life in general. It's, you work at your job, you raise your family, you have your garden, you have your things that you do, exercise. It's about the process. And the moment it changes, because it's all changing, we want to adopt the attitude of those monks, like of impermanence, like this is a part of the nature of life. And and our ability to be relaxed and to trust in whatever's happening now is going to be linked to the extent to which we can feel okay with that impermanence. If we are not okay with it, we're going to have a very rough transition when the thing changes. If we are okay with it, then we may be able to be in a space of gratitude or to see another opportunity of what, remember that, I don't know if you remember the video game Frogger from when we were kids. The frog would leap from log to log. Yeah. That's what's happening, in life. It's like opportunities are all around us, but if we're not paying attention, then we're not going to be able to leap from one to the next, to the next, when the thing changes.
Yes.
And so that's always the opportunity during the transition point is where's the next leap of faith going to take me? And you have to be present, you have to be available, you have to be looking, you have to be grateful for what you have, and that will give you the richest information of where to go next. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you may end up retreating or contracting to what happened in the past, thinking that's where your happiness is. But that's just a recipe for kind of caging yourself in this old view of life, and it just doesn't feel good because then you want to control everything, mm-hmm. So that it doesn't change. Which control is opposed to evolution, as my teacher says.
I love it. And also that the other pandemic, all the distractions were stripped from us, and we were mm-hmm. locked down and had to sit with ourselves, and our routines and our habits were
and
taken away from us. And our toilet paper.
Why do I have all this toilet paper? I get to sit with that question. Why do I feel the need to have all this toilet paper?
Exactly, it's crazy.
I haven't had any smooth move. What's going on here?
So I just think you're such a shining example of breaking routine and habit and going through this. You kind of force yourself into change and discipline and commitment, which is so uncomfortable sometimes. Mm-hmm. And we all got so very comfortable in our routines and habits and sleepwalking, mm-hmm. That the pandemic, global pandemic, woke us all up with a big slap across the head. And
yep.
Oh my gosh.
And the social justice pandemic and all of that.
We were in a place where things have been going on, mm-hmm. and now we're in a place where a lot of the distractions are turning, so you have to deal with it. We have to deal with it.
Yeah, you have to deal with it. It's like if you discover you have a rat infestation in your kid's room, you have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. You can't ignore that. You can't have rats running around in a little baby crib and all that. You got to deal with it, as uncomfortable as it is, which is a great thing. Because the moment you start dealing with it, it's the moment you can start to change whatever that reality was into something that's a little bit more in alignment with whatever you want to create for yourself. And that's what people need to remember, is that the creative energy resides within you. Whatever you can imagine, whatever you can dream about, whatever you can envision for yourself, you can create it. It won't happen overnight, but you can still take one step.
Exactly. And as far as social justice, there's a lot of people that say, Martin Luther King Jr. was dealing with it, and we're still dealing with the same problems we had before. But I think that so much progress I think you talk about it in your book, so much progress has been made.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. It's like when you're in it, you can't see it, but it's
right.
like we all have to continue.
Yeah, I was on a walking tour through East London, and it was the Jack the Ripper tour.
Yes. This story.
So we were going through East London through the streets, and the tour guide was pointing out all the old tenements that used to be there and how the conditions were so just crazy. Everyone had STDs. Everyone was alcoholic. There were 75% of women were prostitutes, even though they were mothers and wives and things. But that's the only way they could make money. And there was no plumbing, so people would just use the bathroom in a bucket and dump it out on the street. So excrement was all over the streets. The kids were playing barefoot and then coming in. And most kids were dying of typhoid fever before the age of 5. Just crazy conditions.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of reminded me of how far we've come as a society. And even though we still have all of our problems and things that need to be solved, we've still come a long way.
Yes.
And so it's just a comparison to how, we have obviously this kind of, very high ideal of what a perfect society would look like. And we're very far away from that, but we are a lot further away from where we've come from. And people in those times probably had the same thought of, we've come a long way since the old days where we would only, where we didn't have a bucket to go to the bathroom in. We'd have to just... I know. So it's just perspective shifting, and it's not to absolve anyone from doing anything, solving anything. It's just to remind us that, hey, look, it's the little baby steps that matter. It's not some big wave of progress. It's just little baby steps. You can do that every single day.
Yeah, and I think every generation has a responsibility to keep going forward and making improvements, and it starts with tapping into that inner knowing of what's right or wrong. You have the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. who says, someone asked him, and you could speak to this better, but someone asked him if he thought that the Montgomery bus
boycott would be successful.
Yeah. And
he said something to the effect of, it's not for me to say, and it's not for you to analyze whether or not it's successful. My obligation is to do what I feel called to do inside, to do the right thing, and the rest of it is in God's hands.
Yes.
Which is, again, something we could all adopt. Because we all have that. We all are grappling on some level with, a choice where we're choosing between what we may think is the right thing or the safe thing.
Yeah.
And or the thing that makes us fit in more with society. And that to me says always choose the right thing. Whatever your heart says is the right thing, no matter if it's the popular thing or unpopular thing. And that's something, again, we can all be reminded of as many times. Totally. So the book is kind of made, again, just these tiny little, it takes you 30 seconds to read that, but those 30 seconds could really shift your entire perspective for that day, and whatever you act upon that day could shift your entire life.
And I truly believe the universe is conspiring for us and nudging us in the direction of our unfoldment and our gifts and sharing our gifts. So in that vein, the intelligence is so intelligent that connects us all, that keeps the planets revolving around the sun, and the just intelligence of nature. And so I have to trust that you are going to pick up the book with a question in your soul, or something that's going to happen in your day that like a quote will be, or a dose will be, prepare you for. And I see that over and over again with how my life is unfold. You obviously operate with that kind of trust. So thank you for giving us kind of a tool that can shift.
Thanks for spreading the word. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of wonderful support from people, and like I said, you've been one of the longtime supporters of my work, of my teaching, and so I'm very grateful to still be in touch with you and to be able to call you a friend.
Yeah, I'm a longtime doser. Thank you, Light. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Heal Podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. Oh, and make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. And if you feel inspired, we would love you to rate and review us so that we have the opportunity to reach more people. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram for some behind-the-scenes fun and more inspiration at Heal Documentary and at Kelly Gores. Thank you so much, and be well.